Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Saturday the 14th of September 2019, and that means it is Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld, and that was Silver Pimp by Mark Battaglia, who writes all and composes and performs all of the Smaulgld introductory music. A shout out to Mark Battaglia and a big thank you for that tune as well as all the other tunes. Now tonight we are going to talk about the history of junk silver. I got a comment in under one of the videos that I had done asking me if I thought the junk silver premiums were going to skyrocket again. And I didn't really answer the question, and then we corresponded, and he reminded me that I had covered this topic back in 2015 and was showing some charts on the premiums on junk silver. Now, junk silver is a very, very interesting topic, and it's one that deserves to be revisited. So tonight we're going to go through what is junk silver, how much does it go for, why do people buy it, why does it go in and out of vogue. We're going to talk about the prepper premium, and we're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of junk silver. We're going to talk about how much has been melted, how much is left. We're going to talk about the numismatic value. We're going to go through the history. It's going to be quite interesting. So first of all, what is junk silver? Junk silver briefly refers to mostly U.S. dimes, quarters, and half dollars that are 90% silver. Some people include dollar coins in that. We'll cover those tonight. And some people also include 35% silver wartime nickels, and we'll cover those as well. Now, some people also don't like the name junk silver. They think it's a pejorative term. After all, we all like silver. We wouldn't call it junk. But it's 90%, and it's less than sterling silver, which is 92.5%, and it's not the silver purity of a silver eagle or a Canadian maple leaf or a silver round. It's usually at least 3 nines. So some people call it junk, but the people who don't like that might call it 90% silver and call it what it is. Why give it this junk term? Now, others might call it constitutional silver. I do not like that term. It implies that somehow the Constitution, it's a misnomer, mandates that the United States government use gold and silver in the coins. It does not. In fact, Article 1, Section 10 reads, and you don't have to go far, it just says that no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. It was a restriction on the states, not the federal government. It did not mandate the federal government to use gold or silver, but it told the states, don't go printing up paper and try to inflate away your debt, so you must use gold or silver. So I don't like the term constitutional silver. So junk silver or 90% silver, I'll use those terms interchangeably tonight as we go through our presentation on this particular topic. Okay, now junk silver generally is not going to have any added value other than the value of the silver content itself. Now currently you get the silver value, which is 90% of the coin, but you don't get any copper value. So I guess you pick up that copper for free because the other 10% in a junk silver or 90% silver coin is 10% copper. Now remember, all these coins once were and still are legal tender. We're talking about, and we'll show you pictures of them, dimes, quarters, half dollars, nickels, and of course the dollar coins. And they were made not for collection. There was no special issuance of them other than if you're talking about proofs or uncirculated coins. That's not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about the average circulated dime, quarter, half dollar, dollar, and nickel that was issued by the United States government, not for collectability, but just so that people could use it. Now, in each dime, it gets a little tricky here. You would think, well, a dime is 1/10 of a dollar, and therefore it would be 1/10 of an ounce, a quarter of an ounce, a dollar, half an ounce, and a dollar full ounce. It's not quite that neat. Indeed, a dime has 0.07234 ounces, which is less than 1/10 of an ounce. A quarter has 0.18084, I think, 18084. Ounces of silver, not 0.25. The half dollar has got 0.36169 ounces. And the silver dollar's got about 0.77344 to be exact ounces of pure silver. Now, why are they even a thing, so to speak? Well, in 1965, the United States decided to remove the silver from the coinage in order to free up the silver for industry. They also were debasing the coinage, but there was a rational argument that silver was becoming a much more valuable commodity in photography, in electronics, and it was very important to have that silver freed up for industry. So they decided, hey, the penny and the nickel are made out of copper and nickel. We can just make dimes, quarters, and half dollars out of the same materials, and off they went. And the silver coins they stopped making them. Now, a decision like this, they don't take lightly, because for the longest period of time, the U.S. Treasury used to try to peg the price of silver at about $1.29 a troy ounce, just enough to give the silver dollar a dollar's worth of silver value. So that 0.77, you multiply it times $1.29, do the math, you get about $1. Same thing with the quarter, dime, and half dollar. And they would do that because it was artificially manipulated. A lot of people talk about, oh, we should go back to a gold standard or a silver standard, whatever you want to go to. It all still involves manipulation. It involves the government, trusting the government to do the right thing. And that also means that gold and silver, during the periods of time of these types of standards where the government manipulated the price, they manipulate it lower. So you think they manipulate it today? I don't think the government's that involved in it the way they were back then. By the way, last night we did do a video on manipulation, so check that out. Okay, back to junk silver. So they decided to remove the silver from the coins, and they knew that if they did that, you don't have to be an economic genius, either in the public or in politics, to know that people are going to hoard those coins. So the United States did something, I don't know if it was clever. It was designed to stop the hoarding. I don't think it did one bit of good. They decided to mint up as many as they could in 1964, and through 1965, they were still minting till about May 1964 dated coins. And the idea was, Lyndon Johnson warned those who might consider hoarding the silver coins that there would be no profit in doing that. He said Treasury's got a lot of silver on hand. This is when they had this big strategic stockpile. They had two piles. They had a strategic stockpile, and they had a pile to allow the redemption of silver certificates, which they finally stopped allowing in 1968. And he said, Treasury's got a lot of silver on hand, and it can be and will be used to keep the price of silver in line with its value in our present silver coin. There will be no profit in holding them out of circulation for their value of their silver content. Well, he's admitting that, hey, if we have to manipulate, we can manipulate, we will manipulate, we have the power to manipulate, so manipulate we will. Now, even then, I would still, even if I believed him at the time, and I was positive he was going to do that, and they did indeed do that. This is my point about manipulation. If a government wants to manipulate, they'll manipulate. They don't have to hide it. And they went ahead and did that. I would still tell myself, okay, but I still want the silver coins, even if there's no profit in them. Why? Well, a dime is worth a dime, a half a dollar is worth a half a dollar because it's stamped on there. That's the fiat value. But the copper nickel fiat coin has a fiat value, but it doesn't have an intrinsic value anywhere near what's stamped on it. So, worst case scenario, I'm not going to be worse off having a silver dime. I'm not going to be worse off having a silver quarter than I am a clad copper quarter. I still have the intrinsic value. If anything happens, currency crisis, United States has inflation, which it did later on, so it made sense to hold those coins. But even if all things are considered equal, they're still not equal. You're still better off with the silver coin. All right, so let's go back in history and see how we got to where we have silver in the coinage and how all these coins got made, and we'll give you some interesting stories along the way, what happened when they melted down coins in 1918. But let's start out with the first U.S. silver coins. Now, we're talking about 90% silver, right? It wasn't always that way. The original first U.S. silver coins were not 90% silver. They were 0.8924% silver and 10.76% copper. Now, I'm not quite sure how they arrived at that amount, but the first U.S. silver coins were the flowing hair half dime and the flowing hair half dollar. They were minted in 1794, and they had that 0.8924 silver and that 0.1076 copper. Then 2 years later, in 1796, dimes and quarters, made of the same fineness, 0.8924 and 0.1076 copper, they started minting dimes and quarters. And by 1836, they flipped it around to 90% silver, 10% copper, and that was the cap bust half dollar. And then the next year, the U.S. Mint began minting 90% silver, 10% copper dimes and quarters. Now, these are not obviously junk silver. These are going to give you a pretty hefty numismatic premium. We're not talking about that. I'm just mentioning these because these were the first silver coins, and they were not 90%. They were 89.24%. Kind of a wouldn't roll off the tongue saying you're buying 89.24% silver. I think then you would say junk silver. All right, let's take a look at these types of silver, these types of junk silver. I'm going to start off with the silver nickel. The silver nickel generally has a very low premium. It's got the lowest premium, no matter what the premiums are, even when the premiums are higher, it has the lowest premium of all the junk silver. And the reason for that is it's only 35% silver. But the silver in it is pure, and the other 56% is copper, and then the other 9% is a mineral called manganese. Now, why did they have these coins made at all in 1942? You would think silver was valuable then. Well, so is nickel. Nickel was more valuable because nickel was used in the creation of munitions. And so they decided they were going to preserve the nickel and spend the silver on coinage. Now, if you look at the coin you're looking at, you see it's got that big P on it. That stands for Philadelphia, and that was the first time the P had been used on any U.S. coin. And also they come in D and S for Denver and San Francisco. And they made decent amounts of these. They weren't stingy in producing them. They made about what they would have made in under normal time. So it wasn't like there was a wartime shortage of nickels, and it wasn't like they were not producing coins, or they were worried that because they were silver they were costing them money. They did indeed make, I'm looking at the mintages right here, in 1942, 57 million of the Philadelphia, 32 million of the San Francisco. The next year, they made in Denver 43 million. In San Francisco, they made 104 million. They made 271 million in Philadelphia. Now, that's pretty much a little bit more than they had been making in the years 1938 to 1942. So no slowdown. They weren't trying to preserve silver. And these, again, are 35% silver and 56% copper. Now, today, due to the metallic value, these are worth almost $1. They're worth 98 cents. But the reason they don't trade as high as a premium, there's a higher meltdown cost, because you got to separate three metals, so it's not as easy as just separating the copper from the silver. You got to separate the copper from the silver, from the manganese, and it gets a little clunky. But I think they're a good barter item. If they're worth approximately $1 today, they're worth, according to Coinflation, 98 cents. That's not a bad deal. That's the cheapest coin there is, because the dime right now, when we get to that one, is worth $1.26. So round numbers. The other thing is they're readily identifiable as something different, as something you can easily look up and say, oh yeah, that's a wartime nickel. You don't got to check dates. If they do not have a mint mark on the back, that big mint mark staring you in the face, then it's not a silver nickel. In fact, I saw one. This is a personal anecdote. I was telling my wife about these nickels, and she's like, oh, okay, she wasn't really paying attention, I suppose. And I was like, yeah. And I went to the bank that day, and on the way to the bank, I was thinking, I'm going to search a roll of nickels and see if there's a wartime nickel in it. On the way, I found this nickel on the sidewalk. This was a silver nickel, and wouldn't you know it, there was actually a silver nickel also in the roll that I picked up that day. Very lucky day. It's like winning the lottery, but effectively it was like getting, like doubling my money. I got a roll of nickels for $2, and then I got $2 extra worth of nickels in the silver nickels that I found on the ground and also in the roll. But good story. You see, I'm telling it 7-8 years later, so it did leave an impact on me. And the reason they put those big letters on them was the Treasury was determined to get them out of circulation as soon as the war was over, and it would make them easier to identify than having to sort them out by date. So those coins, 1942, 1945, no difference in how they look, other than there's a big P, D, or S on the back. They look a bit different because of the silver content, but the old nickels all look different anyway. All right, now, I would like, if you'd like, go to Smaulgld.com, and I have all of this laid out in front of you. You can kind of follow along if you're dozing in and out and listening, or you want to watch it later and kind of check out the data that I'm giving you. Just go over to Smaulgld.com and check it out. Here's the link for it's kind of what I'm using to go through this presentation. I'm seeing some comments in the sidebar. I'm going to get to the comments at the end of the presentation, so let me get through the whole thing, and you can follow along, and if you got other questions, you can go ahead. Also, I put links. These are affiliate links. You can check out Silver War Nickels from Golden Eagle Coin, Money Metals Exchange, and SD Bullion. If you're interested in buying any of the products that we're talking about tonight, this isn't a sales presentation, but you do have an opportunity to help Smaulgld out if you're interested in buying any of these coins. If you click on those links, you pay no more, no less than if you visited them that site directly. But if you do buy, Smaulgld will get a small commission. So I point that out up front. Won't mention it again, but as we go through each coin, at the bottom of each coin's description, there will be links on how to purchase those coins. Okay, let's go on now to silver dimes. These are considered much more in line with what one would consider junk silver. The nickels are kind of considered junky junk silver. Let's take a look at the first one. Now, this is somewhat of advice. When you buy junk silver, I think you're better off buying, because they have no numismatic value. You're buying them for the weight, and you're buying them with potential to use as a barter item. Now, a lot of companies will charge you a little more to have something like this Barber dime that you're looking at right now. Now, the Barber dime is called the Barber dime, not because there's a barber on the front, but because the guy who designed it, name was Charles Barber. For an original name. This coin wasn't very popular. In fact, this coin, though, was minted from 1892 to 1916 and was on the dime, the quarter, and the $half. Very inventive mint at the time. They had all three coins look the same, other than one said one dime, the other said one quarter, the other said one $half. Otherwise, it was the same coin, same design. So Charles Barber must have been happy that he had hit the trifecta on his design. Now, as I mentioned, they're going to cost more than the Mercury dimes, and they're going to cost more than the Roosevelt dimes, the 90% dimes. And junk silver actually has, in the industry, they'll weigh them differently than uncirculated coins. So while I mentioned the dime, when it was minted, might have 0.07234 ounces of silver, a junk silver coin will have 0.0715 ounces, so they'll pay less because they figure some of it's been worn. But one thing is for certain, the Barber coins are always worn in the junk state. And yet, the bullion dealers will charge more for them. And there's a reason for it. They are rare. They don't have much of a numismatic value, but if you're interested in a piece of history, they are cool, but you're generally going to get one that looks worn out. This is a stock photo, so it looks a little better. I even have a stock photo that you'll see in the quarters. It doesn't look very good at all. I wouldn't advise getting these for the junk value, because if you go to trade them in a barter situation, people are going to say, what is this thing? It's worn out. It says a dime. It looks like a Roman. To me, I don't know. We'll see what you think in the comments. The Barber dime doesn't look like to me as good value as junk silver. Now, if you're interested in numismatics and you want to collect a Barber dime set, or you want a specific one, or you want a nice example of one, I think that's a better way to go. I don't view these as junk silver. I view them as worn out old coins that don't look very good. I'm not trying to be pejorative about the coin. I'm just talking about the value of these. They are rare because the largest mintage of Barber dimes is only 22 million in 1907. Mercury dimes' biggest mintage was 231 million. So that basically the Mercury dimes were minting 10 times more than the Barber dimes. We'll get to the Mercury dimes in a second. And 2 billion Roosevelt dimes were minted in 1964 during Lyndon Johnson's. They're not going to hoard these coins because we're going to flood the market with them. So you're going to pay more for a Barber dime. You're not going to get any, I don't think you're going to get any money back on the premium for the silver. And given the fact that most of the Barber dimes you're going to get are going to be worn out, there's not going to be much of a numismatic value on them. But if you're interested, you can check them out. I would, if I was interested, I would buy one or two in a nice form and pay extra, not a silver amount. I would just buy it as a numismatic, but I wouldn't buy it as a barter item because I don't think anyone's going to recognize it. And you're probably going to get less silver because they're worn out. All right, let's move on now to the next dime, which is the Mercury dime. This is an attractive coin. You got the same issue with the Barber in that no one's going to recognize it other than people who know coins. But they're not as worn out in general. I think they're much better looking. There's somewhat of a connection to the modern dime in that you got the fasces on the back. You can see the picture there is very similar to what's on the back of the Roosevelt dime, which is today's coin. They were minted from 1916 to 1945. There's a couple of key dates in the Mercury dime series, and we're going to get to why there's key dates. There's a very interesting reason why there was one year they didn't make any Mercury dimes at all, another year that they were very rare. Now this dime though is a barter item, and some bullion dealers will charge a little extra over these over the Roosevelts. And again, I think unless you just want them, I don't think in a barter situation they're probably going to be worse than the Roosevelt dimes because people are not going to care that this is some type of rarer coin, and it's not rare. I mean, you saw the numbers. It's a pretty numerous coin that was minted. Again, I would think that if you wanted to collect them, that's fine. That's one thing you can do with Mercury dimes. You can pretty much get all the dates pretty easily, other than the rarest of dates. If you just buy the junk stuff and stick them in a folder, none of them are that rare except for a couple of them. And that might be an interesting way to go. But I don't think if you're looking to barter, it's the way to go. If you can get them for the same price of Roosevelt, I would argue that the Roosevelts might be more valuable because they're more recognizable, but there is a premium, at least when they sell them, because the Mercurys are rarer. So that's really a personal preference. Let me know what you think in the comments, whether you would buy the Mercury dimes as a barter item or the Roosevelt dimes, even if they were the same price. I would think the Mercurys do have a much higher collectible, I wouldn't say value, but at least attraction. And they were minted in all mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Fran Freak Show. All right, now, the next coin is, I think, the premier junk silver coin, and it's probably the ugliest coin. It's got the president I probably like the least on it, but these coins are plentiful. Unlike any of the junk silver coins we're going to look at today, even the Washington Quarter, this coin is identical in all ways other than its silver content. It's identical to the current coins, the current dimes that we have. No one's going to say, what is this? When we get to the Washington, you'll see in the last 10, 15 years, they've changed the back of the Washington Quarter. It's not just a heraldic eagle. There's a bunch of different stuff on the back of a lot of quarters. And that may make people think twice that whether they're real or not. But I don't think so. I think the quarters are a good bet too. But these are 100% just like the coins of today, other than they are 90% silver. Except They got Roosevelt on them. There's no key date in this. They're all minted in massive amounts in almost every year. I think 1955 was the rarest year, but still big mintages even that year compared to the Barber dimes. Let me know what you think. I think these are by far the best. But here's another reason why they are, I think, the best. If you ever looked at if you ever looked at silver rounds, 1/10 ounce silver rounds, you say, well, they would be a good barter item. They'd be stamped on them, 1/10 of an ounce of pure silver. You don't have this 0.07234 ounces of silver in a dime. You have 1/10 of an ounce. But here's the problem with that. There's a very high premium on fabrication charge on 1/10 ounce silver that you end up paying dollars over spot when you buy an ounce of 1/10 ounce of silver coins, silver rounds. This one, there's no fabrication charge. Why? They've already been fabricated. And oftentimes you can get them around the price of silver, the spot price of silver. Keep in mind, we're going to get into when these coins start to rise and the premiums go sky high. At that point, you're actually going to make money on the fact that, well, not make money on, well, your coins are going to appreciate because there's going to be a premium placed on having a coin that's in barterable form. And that's why I think the Roosevelt dime is the most barterable of all the coins, more than the Mercury dime and the Barber dime, because everyone knows what it looks like. They're relatively new looking. They're not worn out. There's a lot of them. And they did serve as, people use dimes today, and they use these silver coins before. So in any type of barter situation, people won't feel like they're doing anything strange. You try to get somebody to accept your silver shield coin, and you're going to see some skeleton on, and go, okay, what is this? You're going to say, well, it's an ounce of silver, and there's the silver shield, and you say, oh, I don't know what that is. And they're going to have a problem even with a silver eagle. They're not going to know what that is. But everyone's going to know what a dime is, and then now you just get over the fact that it's silver. And I think it requires the least amount of friction in explaining why you want to use the dime and get more than 10 cents worth out of it. I think it's much harder to explain a 10th ounce round that looks like an old coin than says a 10th ounce, and I think you just end up having a lot of explaining to do. Now, maybe if there is such a thing as a currency crisis or an outage, whatever the circumstance is, and it carries on for a long period of time, yes, at some point people will familiarize themselves and they'll say, yeah, 1/10 of an ounce is, I get it. But in the beginning, no one's going to get it. They're going to know what it is, but they're going to understand, or they're most likely to understand, a silver dime. It's easy to look up. All they have to do is check the date. If it's before 1965, it's a silver dime. Then they just have to know how much silver is worth an ounce, and they can figure it out from there. All right, so they are instantly recognizable. And there's no numismatic. Now let's take a look at we move up now to quarters. The Barber quarter is as equally ugly as, it's not ugly, but it's as equally as bland as the Barber dime. Here's a picture of one, stock photo. You can see it's worn out. I like the back better than the front. It's not bad looking, but again, it's foreign looking to me. You see this in your change, which I never have, and you say, well, what is this thing? And it says $quarter. It says United States of America. You might think it's counterfeit if you didn't know better. You might just think it's a slug. I don't know. But these are sold as junk. And as you can see, generally, this is the state you'd buy them in. They'd be pretty worn out. I think my comments on this are very similar, almost identical to the Barber dimes, because they look the same. They were minted during the same year. They were designed by the same guy. So they're made of the same. There's not much to say about the Barber quarter. Now, the next one, the Liberty Standing quarter, is a very interesting coin indeed. Very attractive coin. Not very many were made. They were minted from 1916 to 1930. There was some scandal about the way Liberty woman was standing, whether her breast was properly covered. This coin is also, it's not that old, but it's worn out in a big way because they didn't make that many of them. And when you don't make a lot of coins, that means that the existing coins circulate a lot more. They get worn out. I think as a bulk coin, you're going to get these. They're going to be worn out. You won't be able to see much on them. Again, this is one where if you're interested in what they look like, I would buy a common dated one with in a better state, just so you can see, you can look at it. But if you're just buying it for silver, the ones you're going to get are going to look more like slugs than anything else. And they'll still be worth the silver value. But again, if you want to use them to barter, people are going to look at it and not know what it is. And they may make for good conversation pieces. But if all you're trying to do is buy something and you have to spend a half hour explaining that it's a Liberty Standing quarter and it was minted between 1916 and 1930, and it's not going to work. Now, the other interesting thing about this coin is not only were they worn out, but you see that date there, 1929. That's on a that's kind of on a recessed. It's kind of pushed in there. When they first came out from like 1916 to 1924, it was raised out further, and the date would wear off well before anything else on the coin would wear off. So then they recessed it a bit. I mean, I don't know who made the design on that to have the date sticking out above the. It looks nice, but in common practice, it's worn out. But that's makes the coins pre-1925 that have dates on them, they might be worth more. You might find one in a junk roll, but try explaining to somebody this one is worth more than the average junk quarter because you can see the date. It's just a lot of information that no one's going to understand. 1925, the U.S. Mint altered the Liberty quarter to eliminate the raised pedestal and to place the date recessed in the same position to protect it from wear, is what I'm reading from on my own blog. And obviously, if they have dates, they're going to sell for a premium without those dates. But in general, as barter and junk goes, beautiful coins, but I don't think no one's going to care. And people might care in a negative way. They might say, what is this thing? And that's something that to keep in mind. I want to know what you guys think. Now, the next one is as easy as a no-brainer as the dime, the Roosevelt dime. It is the Washington quarter. And there's a horrible picture of it. I'm going to leave it up there for a second. Same thing about the quarter. It is like the dime. Everyone knows what it is. Quarter's worth today, silver quarter is worth about $3.15 at today's prices. That's about what you get for a gallon of gas, and that's what a gallon of gas cost around a quarter in maybe 30 cents in 1964. So it is a testament to the staying power, at least the purchasing power of silver versus oil, because it's the same price. You can get if you can go to a gas station and they would accept your quarter's silver value, you would get a gallon of gas in most places. All right, the next one is the Barber quarter. We're not even going to show it because it's the same issue that we've had with the Barber dime and the Barber quarter. We'll move on now to Bernie Sanders' favorite coin, the Franklin half dollar. Now, the Franklin half dollar was minted between... Oh, I'm sorry. Bernie got the better of me. The next coin is not the Franklin half dollar. The next coin is the Liberty Walking half dollar. This is an interesting coin. This is minted from 1916 to 1947. And you'll notice the front is got the same walking liberty that the American Silver Eagle has. Now, you might say, well, okay, if someone knows what an American Silver Eagle is, they'll probably know what this is. But then I think people who know what an American Silver Eagle is probably know what a Barber dime is. So I'm not sure that this adds to its recognizability. In fact, it's really the other way around. When the American Silver Eagle came out in 1986, there were people alive at the time who recognized it as a half a dollar made into a dollar, because these were minted all the way through the late 40s until 1947. So it was only, another 40 years later that and these coins circulated for a while into the 60s, that the American Silver Eagle came out. Nice looking coin. Most of them are not going to be worn out. The worn out ones are collectibles, and actually They won't put them in. They'll charge you more for them. They'll charge you more from like the rarer dated 1916 to 1920 something or other, and they'll be worn out and they'll charge you more. They'll charge you more than the value of the silver for them. The later dated ones you can get as if they're junk silver price. You might pay a bit of a premium. Question comes back again, why would you buy these things? I mean, you might want to buy one if you want a nice looking one, but I don't know if they're any more barterable, why you would pay more for them. Now the next one is the Bernie Sanders coin, the Franklin $50. The reason I say it's Bernie's favorite coin is because he said that Ben Franklin should have left that damn kite at home. He's the father of global warming and climate change because he invented electricity and he's caused all the problems we've had since. So I really don't like this coin, although I think that all right, Bernie. Now, this coin was minted from 1948 to 1963, and who knows? They might still be minting it, except that John F. Kennedy died in the next year. They replaced Ben with JFK on the silver $50. This nice looking coin, they're not rare. This is a coin where you can collect all the dates. There's no rare dates in this if you're interested in doing that kind of thing. No one knows what Franklin... The first time I saw one of these, I was fascinated. I was like, wow, that's what it looks to look like, because I was used to the Kennedy $50. I didn't know. And these were commonly circulated. I was just too young to be around when they were in circulation. If I'm too young, most people are going to be too young to know what this thing is, unless you're a coin collector or you listen to Smaulgld. Or there's no reason. It's nice looking. It's not going to look worn out for the most part. That's just a standard stock photo of a Franklin $50. That's basically what they look like. They're not rare. You can get them for a good price. You generally can get those for the same price as you can get the Kennedy $50. Same question. Why would you do it? Well, if you're collecting them, but I don't think people are going to recognize these things. Now, the next one is the Kennedy $50, 90%, minted only 1 year, 1964. The year after Kennedy died, they minted about 500 million of these things. They're not rare. They were hoarded at the time, but there they are. And after 1964, it's interesting. While they took the silver out of the coin in 1965, they left 40% silver in the Kennedy $50 from 1965 to 1970. And those coins, that's another problem. Trying to explain to somebody, no, it's not 90%, but it's not silver. It's 40% silver. And you see between 1965, that's a story that no one's going to want to listen to. No one's going to want to figure out the price of that. There's some people who swear by 40%. They think it's a good way of getting silver. I think it's just a story you have to tell, and I'm not sure people want to hear it. But that's the Kennedy $50. Now, moving on from that, and a lot of people don't call this junk silver. The Morgan and Peace dollars, both were minted in prodigious amounts. In fact, they minted so many of the Morgan dollars, they managed to melt down half of them, and there's still a lot of them. We're going to get to that in a second. Now, the Morgan dollar, and many of them are in very good condition. Some are worn out, but the Morgan dollar, named because there's not Morgan on the cover. It's not because it's J.P. Morgan. Is because the person who designed it, name was Morgan. George T. Morgan, to be precise. And this coin has in it 0.77344 ounces. These sell for a much bigger premium. You can get them what they call cull, which is like basically worn out. They got holes in them. And you can buy them for their silver value. Right now, the silver value of these is about $13.50. You can find them really beat up for like $15. So there's already a premium on them. I guess it's because of the size or the age. I'm not quite sure. But generally, these are going to cost more. Today's price, you might get them for $18. You might pay $20. You can buy them uncirculated for $21, $22. I don't think you're going to be able to... No one's going to know what this looks like. Dollar coins in America have never been popular since 1935, because they haven't had a circulating dollar coin that's been a success since the end of the peace dollar. The When they reintroduced the dollar coin, they had those big, I remember this, they had the big Eisenhower coins. No one used them. Then they stopped making them for a while. Then they came out with what they called a Carter quarter, which was the Susan B. Anthony dollar. It was the same size as a quarter, a little bit bigger. No one wanted it. No one used it. Then they had the Susan B. Anthony quarters. Then they had the I'm calling them quarters. They made these gold-looking coins, dollar coins, and then they had the presidential series. They stopped making them for the public when they got to about Franklin Roosevelt. They never finished the series. My kids were collecting them, and then they stopped making for general circulation. The mint is selling them. I'm not going to buy them. So they never finished their collections. All right. Let's see. These were made in Philadelphia, New Orleans, Carson City, Denver, and San Francisco. Again, I wouldn't call them junk silver. They're more collectibles, but they're close to the price of silver. And they are interesting if you want one to have a piece of history, for $20, $21. The other thing they do with these is the newly commissioned officers will get one of these as a gift, a silver dollar. And then the next one is, the last one is the peace dollar. And the reason it's called the peace dollar, well, before we get to the peace dollar, let's talk about why we shifted to the peace dollar. Then we'll talk about the peace dollar. Let's talk about the Pittman Act. In 1918, Congress passed the Pittman Act. And Pittman was a senator from Nevada. Now, Nevada was the silver state, the home of the Comstock lode. And as senator, he was probably getting all types of paybacks, kickbacks, and bribes to boost the silver industry in his state. Well, the Pittman Act said we would destroy 270 million Morgan silver dollars. And they'd already stopped making them by 1918 to support the price of silver. How nice is that for Nevada? And then the Morgan silver dollars were melted down, and then they sold the silver bullion to England because England was suffering from a silver shortage in India where they didn't have enough silver to make rupees. So they sold the silver that they melted down from the Morgan silver dollars. I think it was twice the price of silver. So they made a profit on selling it to England. And then under the act, the United States Mint was required to replace all those 270 million Morgan silver dollars that they melted down. And they would be able to buy the silver from the U.S. mining companies, mostly in Nevada, at a subsidized price of $1 an ounce. What a deal Mr. Pittman made for his state. And then they started making them in 1921. And then later that year, they started making this guy, the peace dollar. Now, why is it called the peace dollar? If you know a little bit about history, you know the Great War ended. It wasn't called World War I. It was called the Great War. It ended. And this is around the time of the hopeful League of Nations and beginning of globalism, maybe. And this was to signify the peace of the world. And here is the eagle, which is not really a peaceful animal. I should have put a dove on here if they wanted peace instead of the more warlike eagle. But underneath it, you could see it's written peace. And these are plentiful coins. They made a lot of them. Here's the front of the peace dollar. There she is. This is designed by Anthony DeFranceschi. And supposedly that is a likeness of his wife. But it's not supposed to be his wife. It's supposed to be Liberty. But I guess he had a wife that looked like Liberty. I wonder what he called her at home. All right, so this is same thing. These coins, they cost a bit more. They're not rare. I mean, there are rare dates. You can buy Carson City. There's all types of collectors on this kind of stuff. But just to buy them for their silver content, they're probably clunky just as they are today. Big dollar coins. People are not going to trade them. Everything I'm talking about is for the junk value. I mean, there's people collect this stuff for other reasons. But we're focusing on the junk value, the 90% value. And if you must, the constitutional silver value. So these are going to be more money. They're better looking. But now let's get back to Pittman. Because after these coins were melted down, remember, what had to happen was they were supposed to now go to the Nevada mines, have them working 24/7. And they were going to replace all the coins, the 270 million, the 270 million Morgan silver dollars they melted down and sent to England. Well, no matter how much silver they had, that's a tall order. Because remember, those 270 million were part of like 500 million Morgan silver dollars that had already been minted from 1878 to 1921. They were minting a lot of them for that period of time. You know, for 35 years they were minting Morgan silver dollars. Now they got to replace them all. And the schedule was, they had to replace them over a period of time, but it was a relatively aggressive schedule. And they managed to do it. They started making hundreds of millions of, not hundreds of millions, I'll get you the numbers, the exact numbers on the peace dollars. They started making 65, 70 million, 55 million a year because they were trying to get to that $270 million number. I mean, eventually they did produce 270 million, but they didn't do 100 million in 1 year. But they came close. In the first year, they made 87 Morgan and peace dollars. In the first year, 87 million Morgan and peace dollars. But in 1934, everyone knows about the confiscation of silver by Franklin Roosevelt in his executive order when they confiscated the gold. But in 1934, the United States government confiscated silver, and they had a Silver Confiscation Act. And they called it a nationalization, but what they did was, they called it a Purchase Act, a nationalization. They purchased, I'm sorry, let me get back. They had an executive order, Franklin Roosevelt Executive Order 6814, where they were nationalizing the silver, and then to complement that, they had a Silver Purchase Act of 1934. Now, why were they confiscating the silver, and why were they buying more silver? Well, the 270 million ounces that they melted down left them with a big hole in the silver dollar supply. Well, that's not a problem. They had agreed to replace it with all the silver from Nevada. Well, yeah, they did, but that wasn't enough, because the amount of silver they were able to produce in that short period of time was enough to mint the silver dollars required that they needed to replace. But guess what? They had dimes, quarters, and half dollars they had to mint. They didn't have enough silver for that. So the government decided strategically, and also just for practicalities for making of coins, they needed more silver. So they bought back silver from Americans, and they bought back about 112 million ounces. But even more interesting was they bought 1.353 billion ounces from overseas and all over the place, and from the mines during the 30s. So the act, the order, and to confiscate the silver was really, you use the word confiscate, it means it doesn't mean take without a value given back. It's an exchange of value. Now, unlike the gold confiscation, where they then pulled a fast one, they bought it back from you at $20.67 and then revalued it to $35. They didn't do that with the silver. Silver price stayed. They gave you the fair market value of the silver. And the reason they wanted your silver wasn't because they wanted to take your silver. So when they took your gold, they wanted you to turn in your gold coins, because they didn't want gold to be part of the system anymore. They wanted to devalue the dollar. When they took your silver, there was one type of silver they didn't take: your coins. Why? They didn't want your coins. They wanted to make more coins with your silver. So you had to turn in silver that you weren't using for a particular reason. And most people weren't hoarding silver at the time. But they used that silver to start making coins again. And you could see they purchased a lot of silver on the chart there. And let's take a look now at the pre-confiscation mintages. This is what the Pittman Act did. I mentioned they did manage to make in 1921 87 million Morgan and peace dollars. That year they made 2 coins, and then from 1922 on they only made the peace dollar. But they only made $1.5 million that year. They only made 1.9 million Liberty quarters. They only made 12.3 Mercury dimes. Most of the silver that year, 67.8 million ounces, went towards minting dollars, Morgan and Peace dollars. The next year, they minted 66.8 million peace dollars. And they had no silver to mint, Liberty walking half dollars, standing Liberty quarters, and Mercury dimes. So if anyone tries to sell you a 1922 half dollar, a 1922 quarter dollar, or a 1922 dime, it's a fugazi. Forget about it. It's not real. They didn't make any. Now, it's possible, I haven't heard any stories that sometimes the mint does fool around and they make one and it gets out there, but there's stories about 1964 peace dollars having been actually struck, but then destroyed. Okay, so you can see what's happening. They're minting up the dollars in big numbers, and then 1923, they boosted production a bit in the quarters and dimes, but still, they're not making a lot. So, from the period of 1921 to 1923, they used 163.388 million ounces of silver to make coins. 95% of it, though, 100 went into making silver dollars. So there wasn't much left to go towards the minting of the dimes, quarters, and half dollars, which means those coins are rarer. Now, once they confiscated the silver, watch what happens. Well, they're coming towards the end of hitting their 270 million ounces that they needed to replace for the peace dollars. And they now have got and have confiscated a lot of silver. And they've bought a lot of silver. And look at these numbers. They just explode. They start making a lot of Mercury dimes. They start making the Washington quarter in big numbers, which they introduced in 1932. They make a lot of Liberty walking half dollars, and so now they're making a lot of coins again, and these coins become now what are called junk, because this is the beginning of the real junk period, because these are not rare whatsoever. Right now, let's see what else we got to tell you about. All right, we've already gone through all the boosting. Yeah, so in the blog post, which I'm not going to read to you right now, it does talk about, I went through each coin and explained the amounts that were minted before the silver purchase and confiscation, and then how much they minted afterwards. So all those numbers are there. You can check them out. They're in charts. They're in written form as well. All right, now let's talk about these premiums. Junk silver premiums. Silver, only since I would say since the end of the gold standard, or since they took the silver out of the coins, has really been viewed as a type of doomsday metal. And I'm not being dramatic when I say doomsday could mean high inflation, doesn't have to be Mad Max, currency crisis, emergency shortage. Gold has always been the disaster metal, while silver has always been the day-to-day currency. The reason it really has never been considered a doomsday metal is because people were used to having it. In fact, that's what people viewed what coins were made out of. All around the world until the mid to late 60s, they all had silver coins. There wasn't anything special in a silver coin. Silver was relatively plentiful and valuable enough to have as pocket change. They had silver rupees in India. They had silver coins in China. They had silver coins in Australia, silver coins in Switzerland, all throughout Europe, silver coins in France, silver coins in England, Italy, Spain, Mexico. Canada had silver coins until 1968. United States in 1965. Silver coins, no one thought, oh, I got to hold on to my silver. But once they got rid of the silver in the coinage around the world, then people started to think there's some intrinsic value in that silver. They've debased the money. So silver started to gain attention, junk silver, after 1969, because before 1969, people were busily taking the 90% silver coins, despite what Johnson had said, out of circulation. They were just taking them out, and but there was no value in them, as he mentioned, because what were you gonna? No one was gonna buy them from you in 1965 for their silver content. The silver price hadn't risen much, but by the time 1969 rolled around, the price of silver is rising, and the government is allowing you to melt them down. So they're having some additional value other than the price that's stamped on them, and people start hoarding them. Okay, so in, let's see, what year was it? The early 70s, as people are hoarding them, they start to get a little bit of premium on them. But what really happened was when the Hunts brothers decided they were going to start buying silver, not gold. You weren't allowed to buy gold as American until like the end of December 1974. That's when silver really started to take off. And then by 1970 to 1980, it was rising towards $50 an ounce. So silver coins started to get some doomsday premium on them. And the coins that people started to look at were these barter coins. Everyone knew what they were. I mean, the closer you get to 1965 going back, they were money. I mean, there's no explanation. Everyone knows what's going on. They know the silver coins versus the non-silver coins. They didn't grow up. I mean, today people have entire generations and a half have grown up without even knowing about silver and the coins. They don't know anything about it. Then maybe even in the last 10, 15 years, some people never even use coins. Even the debased ones, they use digital. They use cards, Apple Pay, Google Pay, whatever Pay, bank accounts, Venmo, whatever they use. So they don't even know what coins are. But back then they knew, and they knew that those coins were more valuable. And the premiums on them shut up. Now, junk silver premiums are important because they have been viewed the last 30 or 40 years almost as an indicator of a crisis, or what people believe to be a crisis. Now, we've talked on this show about why silver's price is where it is. It does not have a monetary premium. And it certainly doesn't have a premium that people are buying it other than preppers. It's because they think they can use it at some point in the future to barter. Now, while that's all true, you have to take into account the market doesn't think that's likely. So the premiums go low on the barter silver. They go very low. And the price of silver stays low. So junk silver gets a double whammy, meaning its silver value content is not valued as much as maybe it should be because the silver price is down. And then it gets whacked down even more because it's like, what am I going to do with this dime? It's 0.7, whatever it is, 2, 3, 4 ounces this quarter. I don't want to calculate that. If I'm going to collect silver, maybe I'm going to want an ounce of silver. I don't want 0.07234. I don't want one of those big coins that's got those big dollars that's got 0.7734. I want an ounce. I don't need this. So it's the same with the nickels, the silver nickels. Who wants that? Well, when the price of silver rises, generally in the last 40 years, my thesis and history and charts will show you, is when there's a monetary scare. There's a crisis. There's a reason. There's inflation. Gold is rising, so silver starts rising. That monetary component gets ignited. Well, if you get really worried, what you want barter silver. And that's when silver is not only its monetary component, but its currency component. The actual, hey, I can use this. This is valuable. A dime is worth $1.50. Maybe if the price of silver is $50, it's worth $5. It's worth $4. It's worth a lot more than its face value. And I can use it to buy stuff. Then there becomes a premium, not just on silver it goes higher, but there's a premium that gets tied into the barter silver. Now let me show you the barter silver, what happened and why Let's look at the silver. Okay, so when we had the Y2K issue, that's a classic example of people getting nervous. They're worried that there's going to be an issue. They're worried they won't be able to transact. They're worried that the grid's going to go down. They're worried there's going to be inflation. Whatever it is, they're going to want something that they can hold value and transact. Well, clearly, the run-up to Y2K, it was a gold story, at least at the U.S. Mint. The U.S. Mint sold massive amounts of 1/10 ounce gold coins, as you're seeing, and they also sold massive amounts of the 1 ounce coin. Record years for both, even more than the financial crisis. Why? Financial crisis, for the most part, people were assuaged. After everything collapsed and then they did the bailouts, then people were talked off the ledge and then they did all this QE. It was basically, it's all paper. They managed to paper everything over. The problem with Y2K, which was frightening for a lot of people, was you couldn't paper that over. If the supply lines didn't work, if the clocks didn't turn over, if you couldn't turn on your computer, you couldn't turn on your refrigerator, you couldn't get food, that was a much bigger deal. And so you can see the sales of gold rose. Now, silver eagles, not so much. Why? Well, because silver isn't traditionally a go-to metal. You can look at they went up a bit. They doubled from like 4 million to 8 million, but it was not a big year. That was not the place where people were rushing to put their money in silver eagles. And the thing is, I think back then everyone knew what gold was, and silver people knew what it was, but silver eagles. But the premiums on junk silver skyrocketed before the Y2K. I don't have a chart that shows it, but I think they were like 40 or 50%. They went way up, and the rationale was very clear that they were concerned that they wouldn't be able to transact. So barter silver got a massive premium, even though the price of silver did not go that sky high. And really, gold wasn't skyrocketing either at that period of time, but people were bulking up on it. All right, so why did the junk silver premiums rise? Now, right now, they're actually on the rise, so it's somewhat of a very timely broadcast we're doing. For the longest time, we've done some podcasts on this like 6-8 months ago. Junk silver was the smoking bargain. You can get it close to spot. The war nickels were basically at spot. It can be a very economical way of obtaining silver in bulk. But I would add to that also a very economical way of buying insurance. In general, if somebody wants to buy silver in bulk and there's no crisis, that's why it's junk. It's like, yeah, but it's 90% and it's like in this form and it's hard to count how many ounces I have. So that's why junk silver goes down. But the flip side to that is when people are thinking, oh, silver's going up and hey, that's silver. I don't care if I can't calculate the precise amounts very easily. It's actually better because I'm getting silver that's divisible and ready to go as barter in a proven form that people use and people understand how to use to transact. But again, there are people who, if they're just buying silver, they're stacking silver. They're not stacking junk silver. They go with the 9999 rounds. They may go with privately minted rounds. They may go with government sovereign coins, but they're getting what they think is the real silver, not this junk silver. I didn't show you this chart, but there's a chart that shows how much silver they actually minted to cover Johnson's. We'll just bury you with silver. Look at this. In 1964, they used 550 million ounces to produce those 1964 dated coins. Massive amounts of silver, and then they kept flooding the market with silver to keep the price at $1.29. Very big deal. All right. So one reason that the premiums rise is the price of silver is rising. And then people think that, oh, I might be able to use this for barter. So it's a good time to buy when the premiums are low, because you still, when the price of silver goes higher, people care less about the form that it's in. They just want to get it at all. You can throw it. That's why the melts happen. People turn their junk silver in for the value of the silver. And what that does is it eliminates a lot of coins. And remember, they're not making any more. We've had two huge melts in 1979-80. People melted a lot of coins down. And of course, in 2011, the price gets that high. You think you have a coin that's worth 2 times its value in numismatic? Doesn't matter. The price is 4 times in silver. It gets thrown into the bin. So there's no new supply of junk silver. They may have made massive amounts, but there's been melts. They get lost over time. So at some point, maybe they'll have a numismatic premium. I don't know. But right now, they're still sold at they can be sold at or near the spot price. But during periods anticipating crises, the junk silver premium rises, and rises significantly. So it's almost like, you talk about the inverted yield curve. Well, one chart a lot of people like to look at, and I used to look at it, I stopped looking at it, but I'm starting to look at it again now that we have all these negative interest rates, are the junk premiums. And the reason I say that is, well, let's just take a look what's happened over the last year. The last few months, the junk premium has risen to 6 to 7%. Now this goes as high as 40%. It has gone. I have charts. Let me see. That's the 1-year chart. On Smaulgld.com, I've got all the charts. I'll show them to you. Let me skip the 2-year. I'll show you the 10-year. There you go. Back in 2013, when they thought we were going to hit the debt ceiling, people used to worry about that back then. Now they know they just signed something and they expand it. Back then, they were concerned. They were middle of QE. The premium went up over 20%. You can see back in 2009 was up to like 40%. The financial crisis, of course. It was higher for the financial crisis. You see that? Not the price of silver. In 2011, you could see how it's zero. Why? Because silver is silver at $50 now, so no one cares. But when there's a crisis, look at 2009. 40% premium on the silver. And again, that's because people wanted, yes, they wanted silver, but what they really wanted was a barter item. They really wanted a doomsday item. Then the price of silver goes to 2011, like, give me the dollars. They just turn that stuff in and there's no more premium on it. So when the premium rises, it's almost like an indicator that the price is going to go higher, or at least that people are concerned that an event might happen. Now look at 2016. That's clear. That's Brexit right there. You see coming into Brexit 2016. Now you see the premiums go down. And they're still a decent low premium. They're higher right now than they were in 2012 and 13. But there's a premium that can be had on these coins. The problem with the premiums are very similar to the spikes and dives of silver. If the event doesn't happen, or the event comes and goes, then the premium comes right down. It's just like the price of silver. If the event doesn't happen, the price comes and it goes, and it doesn't stay high. All right, one final thing, and then I'll take your questions. I did a thing called the Money Matrix. I'll just show you the all-in-one. It might be hard to read, but I'll take you through it. So when I trash silver, I'm trashing it at its point in time. When I say trash it, what silver's value is, just like gold, it never changes. It always is what it is. Gold is gold. An ounce is an ounce. Junk silver is junk silver. But you can see by these charts, and by the price charts, and by the premium charts, people are willing to pay at different periods of time, depending on the financial circumstances or the perception of the financial circumstances, more for silver or more for silver in a certain form, like junk silver. When I did the Smaulgld Money Matrix, and I didn't call it the Prepper Premium then, but it actually highlights the Prepper Premium, is I was justifying why the price of silver was low at the time, because while it was durable and divisible, so is gold and so are digital assets. You can divide up a credit card, you can divide up a cash card, the value on there just as easily, probably better, cryptocurrencies. So those properties of money aren't that valuable to silver. They're not unique anymore because they've created this digital playing field where you can do the same thing. Silver is portable, sure, but again, digital assets are even more portable. Gold is more portable because it's lighter. So silver is not really, as a monetary metal, has been superseded, at least if everything is working. Now, for large transactions, it's not worth much at all. I mean, you're not going to bring $1,000 worth and buy a big item with silver. And people don't accept it. So they're more willing to accept US dollars, credit cards, even cryptocurrencies. But where silver shines is in a crisis. It gave it the highest score. As a medium of exchange, all of a sudden it's a 10. If there's a currency crisis, or you have a solar outage, you have a power outage, you have a bank failure, silver's proven. You can use silver. We know it works. And we know that junk silver would be used as a medium exchange. They work for 160, 170 years in a complex economy like the United States. And they're censorship resistant. They're very hard to counterfeit. So I gave silver the highest crisis score of all the monies, because you can't count on Bitcoin working or Litecoin working if the electricity goes down, because the electricity may be down in the part where the miners need it. The banks may be down, so dollars don't work. Gold, it's not very good as a medium of exchange for small items. So if you look at the Smaulgld money matrix, you can see that silver has that dormant monetary / barter quality. The point is, do you buy it all the time, or do you have it for insurance? And of course, you always want to have your insurance before the premiums go up. Those are my thoughts on junk silver. Let me see what you guys are saying in the comments. In the meantime, I'm going to put up the Smaulgld. It's like the tip jar. If you enjoyed this video, I ask you to consider making a small donation via Patreon or becoming a Smaulgld PayPal. I mean, you can make a small payment via PayPal or becoming a Smaulgld patron or a Subscribe Star member or sending Bitcoin or Litecoin through the QR codes that you see on your screen. Buying Smaulgld mugs. They are real wealth, and you could put barter items in your Smaulgld mugs, or sending a small check or silver or cash to Smaulgld LLC, P.O. Box 714, Dover, New Hampshire 03820. The patron update is we're up to 25 big patrons. Very appreciative of that. Got a very nice one yesterday. So let's see what you guys are saying in the comment section. Also, you can support the site if you're interested in any of the coins that we discussed today, or any gold or silver, even platinum or palladium. Please use the Smaulgld affiliate links at Golden Eagle Coin, Money Mills Exchange, SD Bullion, below this BitChute, this YouTube, and on the Smaulgld.com website. Also, you can go over, again, the history of junk silver. I'll leave you the link there again, and you can see everything we've been talking about. I got all the charts there. We're pretty long in the tooth now at 1 hour and 13 seconds. So let me see what the comments are. I won't be able to get to all of them, but if you come back tomorrow night, maybe we get to more comments. Let me just scroll through and see what I got here in the way of comments. Phil McCain, he's got some, might be visiting Mexico. All right. Marijuana Guru, he's switching his gold for silver. Trying to play the gold-silver ratio. You got dimes, 90% silver dime. Did you get the Roosevelt Mercury or the Barber dimes? Ann is making a coffee. Nomadic Giant is here. Hey, Smaulgld, says Marijuana Guru. What do you think of the oil market and the recent attacks on Saudi affecting 5% of oil price? Do you think this will increase the price of precious metals in the short term? No, but I think it'll increase the price of oil, and I think maybe Saudi Arabia is doing that on purpose with their IPO. I don't know. He loves junk, he says. Got $5,000 worth of it. All right. Question: won't someday 90% become numismatic, just like all pre-33 gold coins? Yeah, we don't really know how much has been melted down. It could be. I think they don't make any more of it, and they keep melting it down. All right. So have you ever made the association, the Wizard of Oz, with gold, silver, and the dollar? Yeah, I've seen that before. Okay, I think the Barber coins are... Oh, I'm surprised you didn't get banned for that comment. Marijuana Guru, hey Smaulgld, because of the availability of 90%, how many of those coins you think have been melted down for industrial situation? No idea. I think PCGS and NCG, they've done estimates on it, but no one really knows. All right, Andrew, what else do we got? Greg Collins, forget bartering for gas in the crisis. The gas supply chain is one of the first things to break down. Get an EV and charge it for your own solar PV system. Well, that's a good point. All right. Good idea. MRPSR says eagle symbolizes America enforcing the peace. That's a very good point. That comment was made when I was looking at the peace dollar, and the thought came to mind, why do they have an eagle and not a dove? And he likes, or she, I don't know who this is, likes to look at the peace dollar. Yep, it is a nice looking coin. All right, let's see. That's about it there. All right, everyone, I want to thank you very much for joining me tonight. Please join me again tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is Solid Gold Sunday with Smaulgld. Please check out smaulgld.com. Like this video. Share the video. Sharing is important. If you share the video, we get more subscribers. We get more patrons. I can produce more content. But thank you very much, everyone. See you tomorrow on Solid Gold Sunday with Smaulgld.